Welcome to Season 18 of Marrow Masters, produced for the National Bone Marrow Transplant Link and sponsored by Sanofi and Jazz Pharmaceuticals. This season is all about the caregivers. Our guests will offer up their best tips, experiences, and advice. We'll cover the importance of self-care and share heartwarming stories of compassion and love. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the NBMT Link, Peggy Burkhardt.
Welcome, everyone. So today we have with us Sally Werner, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Cancer Support Community. Today, Sally is going to talk to us on several levels, including as a caregiver and as a CEO who is compassionate about helping patients and their families every day, just like the Link. Welcome, Sally.
Thank you, Peggy. So happy to be here with you today.
Let's talk about yourself and your role at Cancer Support Community.
Sure. So I have a long history in the oncology space, first as an oncology nurse and then a health administrator for over 20 years. So really working on the clinical side for the majority of my career. And then about 8 years ago, I made a big shift into the nonprofit space and into advocacy, first at one of our network partners in Iowa, Gilda's Club Quad Cities, and then with our headquarters organization for the last 7 years. So I've overseen just about every department at Cancer Support Community, and I've been the CEO now for the last year and a half.
Do you love this role?
I love it. I call this a passion job. I get up every day excited about what we're doing, what we'll accomplish, how many patients and caregivers we'll be able to touch. So yes, this is an amazing job.
I can relate to that. I speak that language as well. So it's really, really nice to have you. So Sally, a while back, I read the most wonderful article about you and how you became a caregiver to your mother-in-law. You didn't live near each other, and you somehow managed to fill that job role. I as well have a sweet mother-in-law. I'd love to hear more about this.
So my mother-in-law has been my mother-in-law for 28 years. I've known her since I was a teenager. So she's like a second mom to me. She has a very large family, and they have had a lot of cancer in the family. And she previously had a thyroid cancer diagnosis and then ended up getting a renal cancer diagnosis. Her entire family kind of shudders anytime there's a diagnosis of cancer because there's so much cancer in her family.
Sure.
Given my background, understanding, and expertise, of course, I'm one of those first phone calls, right? When there's a diagnosis. And so it's really been my honor to support her through this diagnosis, to help her kind of weed through all of the complexities of her diagnosis. She has a pretty rare cancer. And so I have been caregiving to her for several years now through first diagnosis and then surgery and now immunotherapy. So it's been kind of a long, winding road, Peggy, but really the first time in my life I've supported hundreds, thousands of people with cancer, but the first time this was really close and a tough situation for me personally to get through with and for her.
Sure. When it gets personal, you take everything you know, but your heart is also involved. So it makes it a little bit different. I want to talk about being so close to a loved one. I read this and it just resonated with me so much that it can hinder objectivity. How do you handle that when things are tough and you're just feeling so close to it, but you want to make the right choices?
Yeah, so that's a great question because emotions run high and I want to support her, make good decisions with her, and not for her, which I think we'll talk about, but with her, and also make sure the family understands some of those decisions. And so I utilized our own resources at Cancer Support Community. I worked through our navigation program. We have a national helpline.
Okay.
And one of the navigators and I had a great conversation about her getting to know my mother-in-law because in certain situations, in certain scenarios, I knew I couldn't be objective, that I was going to have an emotional response versus my typical nurse Sally, work for a cancer organization response. But I also knew my family members would, including my husband, my father-in-law, my sister-in-law. And so navigation was key for us, having a third party who could remain objective as we went through a lot of steps in the process, including a second opinion, having that person get to know my mother-in-law, be on some of our calls, and help us really keep our heads about us at critical steps and at critical points.
Oh, that's great. You mentioned second opinions. Was that just a no-brainer for you to know that from your work and your experiences through work? Tell us about that.
Yes, that was definitely a no-brainer for me because she has a rare and complex cancer. And someone coming from the community cancer space and knowing that most cancers can and should be treated in the community and that you don't always need to travel for care. Because her cancer was so rare, had a genetic disposition to it, a second opinion was top of mind for me. Where navigation came in was really helping to make that happen so that my mother-in-law didn't have to travel, that we could just get her medical records sent over, all the authorizations. The paperwork for that is usually the biggest barrier, so we took all of that off of her hands and made it as simple as possible. But also, Peggy, they were offering her a really aggressive treatment and surgery, and the whole family was concerned about that. So that was one of those times where emotions kind of ran high. We needed to be objective. And I have to say, we had an amazing second opinion experience where her existing provider, who she was very concerned about offending,
Sure.
was very supportive of second opinion and went over it with us in detail when it was received. And it was not the same treatment. It was not surgery. It was immunotherapy. And so I think a sense of relief at the same time as, oh my gosh, this is different. Why are other providers suggesting a different treatment course? So second opinions, I always recommend them in cancer. I call it a peace of mind opinion. And sometimes you get that peace of mind where even if I traveled, they're going to do the same exact thing as my local oncologist. Or maybe there's something different or better out there that isn't available locally, which was the case for us.
Okay. Wow. That is so interesting. I'm so glad that you shared that. That immunotherapy is really a game changer.
Especially from a symptom, side effect, quality of life, activities of daily living for her have been amazing.
Oh, good. Oh, good. We'll talk more about how she's doing today later.
Yeah.
Let's talk about being a caregiver and, draw from your experiences, of course, with your job, the self-care aspect.
Yeah. So my father-in-law, who of course lives with my mother-in-law, I think it's so important to keep an eye on the caregivers, the caretakers, the carers that are there and present in the home. We all know when there's a diagnosis, you wake up thinking about cancer, you go to bed thinking about cancer, and you hope for a lot of distraction somewhere in between. But my father-in-law, God bless him, eats pie when he's stressed out. He's a sweet guy.
I love it.
Making sure he had pie when he needed it, but also that we had some great outlets for him, especially post-operatively, where you feel like you can't leave your loved one's side and you have to be there 24/7. I moved in with them for a short time. I helped with laundry. I helped with meals. I helped just saying, we call him Pops. I'm saying, Pops, get out of the house, go for a drive, go see, my sister-in-law lives nearby, go see your grandkids. And making sure he took some time and space for himself, but that I did the same, right? Because that was an intense time post-operatively. So care for the caregiver, I can't stress it enough, worrying about his own health, his own well-being, my own health, my own well-being, of course, keeping a close eye on my husband and children who were experiencing this from a distance and waiting for my report-ins and waiting for good news. And so being kind of introspective and doing self-care during those times.
This is great. And to think of your husband, it is his mom.
Yeah.
Oh, that's neat.
That's a lot on my shoulders.
Sure.
He's saying, do your thing, right?
Yeah. Take good care of.
Now's the time.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, he must have been so thankful to have you there for his mom and dad. That's really great. So let's talk about friends and family. And we did a little bit, but like getting the support you need when you're a caregiver.
Right. So I, again, used a lot of our own resources at Cancer Support Community. We have something called My Lifeline. my lifeline is an opportunity for a patient or a caregiver to set up a site for their loved one and to bring others into the fold. What's great about that is my mother-in-law has a huge family. My father-in-law has a large family. They have their own extended family of kids and grandchildren. And you don't want to make 52 phone calls every time something changes in your cancer care. And so setting up my lifeline gave me the opportunity to support her, give others information, including education on her diagnosis. So we didn't have to repeat that over and over again, but also to set up a caring calendar.
Okay.
And so I often think when there's a diagnosis, my mother-in-law is a very proud person, and she's an amazing cook, and she wasn't going to ask for that type of support. So we kind of just had to humble her a bit and say, now's the time, right? If you're going to accept any support, but you get to dictate what that is, what you want help with, right? So on a helping calendar or a caring calendar, do you need a meal on Tuesday? Someone to walk your pet on Friday, right? Do you want, Uncle Tommy to be included in all of this? Or you can pick and choose who you want to do what, right?
Yes.
She's a picky eater.
Because she's such a good cook.
She's a good cook.
I get it.
So I think that was amazing, including, she has great neighbors too that check in. They're well-intentioned, but people don't always know what to do. So if you give them that guidance and you tell them what you need, that's what they're going to do instead of something that really maybe isn't helpful. She has a neighbor that she walks with every day. And that walking partner, she wasn't able to walk for a while post-operatively, but once she was moving again, that walking partner was an inspiration to her. But Patty Jo, my mother-in-law, got to set those boundaries and those requests around her caring calendar.
Yeah. Having that to look forward to and having a great friend that realizes maybe in the beginning you can't go the whole distance, but, that ability to flex. I'm sure that was appreciated.
Right, yeah.
I've also learned along the way, too, that to what you said about giving people an assignment, people want to help. They don't always know what to do.
Right.
So giving them a job is a great way to make them feel appreciated and valued, and they can just wrap their arms around that job. So I think that's an important thing to remember.
Absolutely.
Yes. So Sally, we all know that Scanxiety is always there. Test results are always around the corner. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So many, many years ago, when we decided through the United States government that we own our own medical record and that we could see those results ahead of a provider appointment, that's tough for providers, for nurses, for physicians, because someone may be receiving that information without interpretation, right? Without someone to really kind of mediate and tell them what that means. And so not just my mother-in-law, but I get a lot of phone calls of I'm reading this lab test or I'm reading this CT scan. What does this mean for me? But also potentially receiving some bad information independent of a physician appointment. And so we all know when my mother-in-law has scans, we know that's a tough time for her, that it's nerve-wracking for her. It's nerve-wracking for us. She knows everyone's going to expect to know the result of that scan. And so it's hard for her to go. She has a little bit of claustrophobia as well.
Sure.
But then also kind of the aftermath of that, of waiting for the result. Once the result is received, not necessarily understanding it. And then waiting for the follow-up appointment with the physician. And so, as I mentioned before, she's on immunotherapy. So we go through Scanxiety every few months. And she's had really good results. But she also knows that this isn't a cure for her cancer. This is a really good treatment option with good quality of life. And so I think as a family and as a patient, it's like waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Great way to put it.
When will my treatment no longer be working? And so it's something you cope with as a family together as best you can, and then individually as well.
Well, I can imagine you are just such a support to your family. Let's talk about shared decision-making and honoring the choices. Like you mentioned earlier, it's her decision what she does.
Yeah, that's right. And so often we see family, friends, well-intentioned individuals giving advice, right? It's kind of like when you're pregnant or have a new child, everyone has a piece of advice for you. Well, the same is true in cancer care. And her father had the same cancer as her. Her brother had the same cancer as her. And her father's diagnosis, there were far fewer treatment options. And he chose not to take some of those treatment options because of age and quality of life and his status. And so that all sits in the back of her entire family's brains about, should her dad have done something different than he did? Should he have been more aggressive? So when it was Patty Jo's turn and, we had these really aggressive treatment options, what I said to my husband, my father-in-law, my sister-in-law is, this is her choice and we're all going to support her choice, right?
Yes.
And it was hard for me, being the role that I am in the family, to kind of say, this is it, right? You have to respect what she says. But I know for her how difficult that decision was. And no one ever wants to feel second guessed in anything we do, especially our healthcare and our cancer care. And so I think everyone really wrapped their arms around her, knew that she would make the best decision for her. And so what I would say in shared decision making is it's another time where it's good to have a third objective party, right? We have a shared decision making tool called Open to Options that really looks at somebody's values and what their goals are in care and having alignment with that. And so that person can go to their physician with a good question set. And for her, it was a Whipple procedure, major surgery, long recovery, really life-changing in the moment. Could have been a diabetic for the rest of her life versus this other treatment. She's a gardener. She's very active. She loves to walk. Her family is tantamount. She gets to, I used to be at my kids' swim meets and there she would be. She would just show up, even if it was 4 hours away, there was Mama Jo at their swim meet. She had some really important things to her that we all needed to understand of why she was making the choice she was in supporting her.
Oh, that's good. Let's move on about the financial aspect of cancer care. We all know that it's the elephant in the room. It's the tough stuff. Any pearls of wisdom on that?
Yeah. So she's of Medicare age and has a Medicare Advantage plan. We have financial navigators. A lot of different cancer organizations do. Oftentimes your center where you're receiving care do. To remove that barrier, that stressor is pretty critical to kind of take that piece out of her hands to the extent that we could, right?
Sure.
Understanding what her insurance covered, that there might be copays, what we might need to do as a family financially to ensure she could get the treatment she wanted and needed. And so that is yet one other pivotal point where I say, use some external resources. Don't go it alone because it's confusing. I work in the cancer space, right? And I see every EOB that she gets, explanation of benefits that she gets. And, it's kind of like getting that scan result. You have to interpret that sometimes. And what does that mean? And was I supposed to be charged that?
Yes.
And then, for so many, there's this level of financial toxicity of I can't afford my treatment, which means I'm going to make some tough choices about any assets that I have or taking a medical care loan, tough choices in there. And so I always say, use your resources, go to those who know, have them help you understand. And sometimes that may even mean an appeal on something that hasn't been approved. There's support in place for that too.
That's so true. Just feeling empowered to not be intimidated by that process. And of course, triage cancer is one of the best, as we all know.
Yes.
We have a new finance book out. If anyone listening wants to go to our website, we just actually had it printed in Spanish as well, translated and printed in Spanish. And we had it actually written by a financial counselor from UCLA that does this all day long. And there's a lot of good advice, again, to empower people to not be intimidated. And don't always pay that bill the second you get it. If you have a question, feeling confident enough to ask the question. So, Sally, we're getting into survivorship now, the quality of life. We hope the hard part is over. Tell us about Patty Jo and what it's like in survivorship.
Yeah. So I call survivorship as, really living into survivorship the way she wants to and the way she can, right? I talked about gardening, about walking, time with her grandkids and family, embracing all of that. If some of those things weren't still available to her or were a struggle, how do we maximize the things that still go well, right? That are still within her scope and ability and activities. For her, fatigue, like so many, is her number one side effect. So it's just about pacing and energy conservation, right? And making sure she has the tools to understand that. And she's a great patient, by the way. You give her a piece of education, a piece of knowledge, and she is on it. And I would say, and my father-in-law is kind of always hungry for that information of what else can I do? What else should we do? And so diet, exercise, taking some of that empowerment back. These are things I can control. And so they both eat different today. Of course, she has one kidney, which has changed things a little bit as well. But kind of owning that and understanding what she can do within her control, her power. And then the other thing I would say about survivorship is cancer changes us all. It changes the patient. It changes the caregiver. Your outlook on life is a little bit different. And so I know that I have 3 boys. I know that they all talk to Mama Jo every week.
Oh, that's great.
And that their relationships are strong and maybe stronger because of this. It scared the boys. And so I think in survivorship, you have to embrace the good parts of it, right? There's going to be Scanxiety. There's going to be fear. There's going to be all of those things, but there's some really great things too on the other side of that diagnosis that I think we all maximize to the extent we can.
Sally, I love that. I recently had a survivor say, I didn't work this hard to live to not enjoy the rest of my life.
That's right.
And I think that kind of says it all, right?
Yes.
But sometimes in a modified way. It makes me think of a story of a woman who in her survivorship, the fatigue is a big one. And she loved to make pies and she was frustrated because she just didn't have the energy. And her sweet husband said, well, maybe I could help you make the pies this year, which your father-in-law would love.
Yeah, right.
And anyway, they turned it into an activity that they did together. And the pie still got made. They spent some quality time and everybody was happy. So I think we just have to understand all of that and flex and really just enjoy life.
Yes. She loves Christmas. And so, a whole family together at her home at Christmas. My nieces and nephews went over and put all the decorations up, right?
Nice.
We knew how important that was to her. And she's a cook, but so is my husband. And so, he stepped in and they did it together, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's neat. I like that. Well, Sally, thank you so much for today. Is there anything else that you'd like to say?
It's been such a pleasure talking to you. I know you have a similar situation very close to your mother-in-law.
Yes.
I guess, if I have any parting words, it's that cancer support community, other advocacy organizations, so many small local organizations have so many resources and so many things to offer that I think oftentimes as caregivers, as patients, we know about too late. And so I would just encourage, if there's a diagnosis, if there's one way you can support that friend, that family member, that community member, it's by drawing in those resources and then giving patient, full choice of what they want to use and don't want to use. But I think that had I not pulled in some of the resources I did when I did, this would have been a different experience for all of us and not as, nothing's easy about cancer, but it eased the path a bit.
So true. Well, thank you again, Sally, for being with us today.
Of course, my pleasure. Thank you, Peggy.
This has been the Marrow Masters podcast. Please share this episode with someone you think would benefit from it. And don't miss future episodes of our show. Follow Marrow Masters for free on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening right now. Marrow Masters is produced for the National Bone Marrow Transplant Link. Established in 1992, the NBMT Link strives to help patients, caregivers, and families cope with the psychosocial challenges of bone marrow transplant from diagnosis through survivorship. The Marrow Masters podcast is produced by Jag Podcast Productions online at jagpodcastproductions.com.